You shut up and eat the dog's food. When I checked my pet camera from a business trip, I saw my mother-in-law pushing a spoon against my reluctant 3-year-old daughter. Her expression was the most terrifying and cold expression I had ever seen. My daughter hates my mother-in-law on a daily basis and always cries when she is alone with her. I thought that there must be something in my daughter's way of being too young to explain why. "What are you doing?" When she warned her mother-in-law through the pet camera, she was surprised and her eyes widened, not knowing that the camera existed. And after this, she acted outrageously. I'm Violet Russo, 29 years old. I am married and work for a company in Tokyo. Her husband, Horace, works for an elite company and is a proud son of my mother-in-law. My 3-year-old daughter, Minerva, is a very energetic child and she looks just like me. My father-in-law had already passed away, so at the beginning of my marriage, my mother-in-law asked me to live with her. However, I refused to do so even though I felt bad, as it was far from my workplace. Instead, I decided to renovate her house and send her more money so that I could pay off the construction costs. My mother-in-law loves to chat with her neighbors and is particular about always dressing with brand-name clothes. I was worried about where she would have the money to buy luxury goods because she was a widow and didn't work, but she was so confident that she said, "I'm good at making ends meet," so I didn't say anything. Until now, I have felt a strange discomfort with her. The back of her eyes isn't smiling, and she seems to be hostile to me. As soon as I went to my parents-in-law's house in my free time, my mother-in-law, who came to my side, opened her mouth with cold eyes. "What did you have for dinner last night?" "It's pizza." "Again? Last time I asked you, it was the same." "I've been busy with work lately, and this is the only thing I have time to make." "That's an excuse. It's bad for your body if you don't think about the menu properly. If you don't expand your repertoire like I did, poor Horace." My mother-in-law made a number of dishes and put them on the table as if making me feel bad. This is what could happen to any daughter-in-law, and I don't live with her, so I tried not to worry about it. However, when my mother-in-law comes to our house, her daughter, who is still not good at talking, somehow says, "I'm scared of Grandma," and hates her very much, and our dog doesn't even try to get close to my mother-in-law. Your kids and dogs aren't cute at all, and Minerva can't even hold a decent conversation with me. Horace is so smart, so I wonder whose DNA to blame. My mother-in-law looks at me as if to say that Minerva's shyness and speech delay are my fault. In fact, I was also concerned about my daughter's attitude, so I tried to understand Minerva's feelings. "Why are you afraid of your grandmother?" "You know, Grandma A&E. I don't know what's wrong. Would you like to talk to me?" Ugh, ugh, ugh. I don't know. In the end, the daughter cries because of the frustration that she can't understand. Even though I wanted to find a solution, I deeply regretted that I had pushed her to this point, and I talked to my husband about it. Minerva is still young, so let's take the long view, and I'll tell my mother not to talk too much about my daughter. Also, I love what you cook. My husband took all my fears and made me feel a little better. However, in fact, just watching the situation did not improve the relationship between my daughter and my mother-in-law, and it was also a source of trouble for me. If her granddaughter is scared of her, she won't feel good. Maybe it's necessary to keep distance from her now. With that in mind, I made sure I didn't let them be alone. I didn't tell my husband about this because I didn't want to cause any trouble, and I made it a rule only for myself. Then, this worked, and my daughter no longer disliked my mother-in-law, and my mother-in-law stopped being sarcastic. And just when I thought that the peaceful days would continue, an incident occurred. To my surprise, my mother's keepsake accessories were gone. I was depressed and reported the damage to the police. According to the police, there was no evidence of burglars entering, and they asked about the people who entered and exited the house. Besides the three of us, the only person who has set foot in this house is my mother-in-law, but no way. My mother-in-law is a relative, and I told the police that no one was in or out except for my family. And one day, only time passed without solving the case. I decided to go on an overnight business trip and left my husband to take care of the children. However, the work went more smoothly than I expected, and I was able to go home one day early. And when I arrived at the nearest station to my home and noticed a message from Horace, saying that he had to head to the office urgently and left our daughter to my mother-in-law. Though I left Minerva alone with my mother-in-law, I wonder if she's okay. Suddenly, I was very anxious and I decided to check the video of the pet camera installed in the house with my mobile phone to check the situation of the two of them. What a way to do that! A ridiculous sight jumped into my eyes. You eat dog food. Isn't my daughter put in a dog cage and forcibly pressed a spoon that my mother-in-law is holding? I gasped as I filmed the video. What are you doing? I was so surprised that I shouted so loudly into my phone that I was surprised even by myself. My mother-in-law initially said, "What? Who's that?" and she was looking around, but when my daughter ran to the camera and asked me for help, she finally noticed the presence of the camera and her face turned pale. My mother-in-law, who immediately recognized me as the owner of the voice, approached the camera in a panic. And the next moment, the video was interrupted and I couldn't grasp the situation inside the house at all. I can't go on like this. I have to go and help Minerva. I threw off my high heels and ran barefoot to the house. When I arrived home, my mother-in-law was already gone, and my daughter was crying and our pet dog was snuggled up to Minerva's side. When I looked, I saw that the pet camera was shattered and food was scattered all over the room. I could predict that my mother-in-law would have acted in such a ridiculous way as a result of being surprised by my voice. And the Play-Doh crafts that my daughter made at the nursery school were also crushed. It was my daughter's first piece, and it was my favorite. I'm scared. Minerva was crying and clinging to me, so I hugged her tightly. You were scared, but it's okay now because Mommy is here with you. Then, while soothing my daughter, I managed to find out what was going on, and I was a little relieved to find out that Minerva hadn't eaten the dog's food yet. She must have been exhausted. She fell asleep in my arms. After that, I cleaned up my room and couldn't sleep, so I was thinking about various things while looking at my daughter's sleeping face. Minerva hated her mother-in-law because she was being harassed behind my back. If I had noticed this earlier, my husband and I would have shared this with my husband and kept my mother-in-law away from our daughter, and I was filled with regret. How scared was Minerva? Why did my mother-in-law do such a terrible thing to her granddaughter? I felt sorry for my daughter, but I couldn't understand the reason for my mother-in-law's inexplicable behavior. However, I can't forgive her for harassing my daughter for any reason. When I told my husband everything I had done so far when I came home from work, he was surprised. We decided to clarify my mother-in-law's intentions and sanction her. As I was starting to prepare little by little, I received a call from my mother-in-law the next morning. I told her that I wanted her to explain what I saw yesterday with the pet camera. Minerva was just pretending to feed her dog food to make her feel better, and I really didn't mean to feed her. Then why was there a lot of rice thrown around the house? Minerva did it, and she said she liked the dog food better than the rice I prepared. My mother-in-law appealed to me in a strong tone as if my daughter was all bad, but I couldn't believe such a story, and my anger only increased. However, I didn't have enough proof to fight her back with yet, so I pretended to be deceived by her words for the time being, and I steadily prepared for it under the surface. And after everything was in place, I called my mother-in-law. I was planning a birthday party for you with my husband. Well, okay, I'll be right out. I invited my mother-in-law in, who arrived at my house, and asked her to sit at a table with a feast. I didn't think you could make such a delicious dish, but you actually bought it at a department store with a lot of money. My mother-in-law grinned at the sight of a paper bag from a department store in the corner of the room, but I didn't care and put food on her plate. I'm already starving. My mother-in-law began to devour it, and she was in a good mood that everything was delicious. By the way, there is actually a special food specially arranged for you this time. What, caviar or truffle or something? I wonder if her expectation is at its peak when I offer her an expensive wooden box. The mother-in-law's face was flushed and began to drool. While looking at her, I slowly opened the lid as if I were staring at her. Huh? It's dog food. This is not for human consumption. My mother-in-law wrinkled her eyebrows and shoved the box back at me. You did the same thing to my daughter, didn't you? Here is video evidence. Even when I showed her the screen of my phone, my mother-in-law didn't give in and just said that this was just because my daughter wanted to eat. But here, my daughter came out in front of her mother-in-law with her hands on her hips. Don't eat your dog's food. Minerva took care of our dog on a daily basis and understood that pet food was not for human. My daughter, who was struggling with words, became good at talking and was able to say what she wanted to say. Grandma was mean to Minerva. That's not nice. Shut up. Screw you. If you say anything more, I'll make you regret. My daughter heard my mother-in-law's yelling and locked herself in a closet in the next room. After that, my husband and I finally began to pursue the truth of the matter in earnest with my mother-in-law. Why did you do such a terrible thing to Minerva? You don't have to be so angry. I'm your precious mother. However, his anger did not subside, and when he glared at her with sharp eyes, my mother-in-law crossed her arms and suddenly took a sullen attitude. It's Violet's fault. She stole my precious Horace. Just looking at you makes me sick. Then, why did you target my daughter? Horace is likely to hate me if I bully his wife, and the neighborhood might find out that I'm a mean mother-in-law, so I targeted Minerva, who looks like you. For the most unexpected reason, my husband and I left our mouths open. Minerva was still too little to talk properly, so it was easy to be mean to her. It's really the worst thing to make a little kid feel so scared. Also, according to my mother-in-law, she was annoyed that I yelled at her through the pet camera, so she stomped on my daughter's Play-Doh work. Moreover, not only this, but the fact that the food was scattered was a disguise to make it look as if my daughter was making a fuss. As I listened to her story, I was able to learn the inside of her distorted mind and find out the true nature of the discomfort I had with my mother-in-law. I won't forgive you just because you're my mother. Wait, it was just a casual thought. It's too late to say that. I'll stop sending you money too. I'm going to be in trouble if I don't have money from you. Can you reconsider? Then many times the mother-in-law apologized to Horace, but he did not even make eye contact with her. Immediately, the brunt of her anger was directed at me. Horace changed because he was forced to eat so poorly, and if I had forced him to live with me and take care of him, he would have remained smart. To tell you the truth, Horace has always been disgusted with your crazy affection and said he doesn't want to live with you. But I decided to lie that I was far away from work because I thought it would upset you. My mother-in-law probably didn't think for a moment that she was shunned by her own child. She was silent for a moment, unable to find the words with her mouth left wide open. And I decided to reveal a certain fact in order to further push my mother-in-law from here. Don't you know that you annoy your neighbors because you boasted about Horace being elite and having a lot of brand name goods? Oh, is that so? And I'm actually a good cook, and I made today's meal. So, what's in that paper bag? Don't be surprised to see it. When I opened the bag, the contents were a number of keepsake accessories from my mother that I had lost. All of these were sold to thrift stores, and my husband bought them all back. In fact, secretly, I asked Horace to search my mother-in-law's house for revenge. Then, there was a flyer for a thrift store on the refrigerator of his parents' house, and when he went to the store, he saw my mother's keepsake lined up in the store. Explain me this. I wanted to see you upset, and I couldn't pay the mortgage on my house at all because I used the money for shopping, so I really wanted money. I was trying not to leave my mother-in-law and Minerva alone so she couldn't bully my daughter, but instead took away my precious things to relieve stress. On top of that, she bought up luxury brands to look good to her neighbors, lied that she was good at making ends meet, and when she ran out of money, she got mortgage. Anyway, be prepared to report everything together to the police and claim damages and alimony. Not the police, we're family, aren't we? I can't forgive you for doing such a terrible thing to my precious daughter. That's why I'm begging you. I am saying it was bad. You can't just apologize for what you did. This is all a real crime. She deserves justice. I looked straight into my mother-in-law's eyes and spoke with great enthusiasm. Then my mother-in-law said, "Well, then I'll be a dog and listen to whatever you say." She suddenly grabbed the dog food that was beside her and tried to bring it to her mouth, so my husband and I stopped her, saying that it was useless to do so. Then, she must have thought that there was nothing she could do about it. My mother-in-law broke down crying on the spot. I called the police and she was taken. After that, the mother-in-law was interrogated and charged with a crime. I asked her for 3 million yen in alimony and 4 million yen for the money it took to buy the stolen items. My mother-in-law had to repay a large amount of debt, exchange all the brand name products for cash, and even let go of the house. Currently, she has moved into a small and dirty apartment and works from morning to night. Oh yes, my daughter has become so good at talking that she will be playing the main character in a nursery school play. There are a lot of lines, and Minerva practices hard and loudly every day, even at home. In preparation for that day, we have a new video camera and we are spending our days waiting for the day of the actual performance to come soon.